where growth is intentional and impact is inevitable. So we ask that you won't just watch, engage with us. Don't just listen, but learn with us. And don't just sit back. Come take a seat at the table. We are just getting started.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another evening broadcasting results with Rouse. And I am honored, yet excited to have a woman here in leadership in South Carolina that is joining us here tonight. We have Senator Tameika Isaac Devine that is joining us. Hailing way of her district is Richland County, you all, and we'll allow her to tell us a little bit more about it. But we want to welcome you tonight to the platform and thank you again for sparing your time because I know it's busy for being here tonight. So welcome here to the broadcast.
Thank you so much. It's definitely a pleasure to be here with you.
For you all tonight, we're going to jump in a little bit because I feel like it's very important that we understand leadership right now, if not anytime here in South Carolina, and how it is important. And so, having Senator Devine here tonight, we want to talk about her background, what led her into it, but also just where we at as a state. And so, as we dive into this, Senator, if you would, just for people that are viewing you or listening to you for the very first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself beyond politics?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. My name is Tameika Isaac Devine. I am, as you mentioned, state senator. I represent State Senate District 19 here in South Carolina, which is Richland County. I'm also an attorney by profession. And I grew up here in Columbia, went to undergrad at Hampton University, and came back here to South Carolina for law school. And upon graduating law school, I worked at legal services. I worked as a prosecutor and then decided to run for office. And so I served 20 years as a member of Columbia City Council, where I was the first African American female elected to City Council and the first African American to be elected at large. And then after City Council, I actually ran for mayor unsuccessfully, unfortunately. But that gave me really an opportunity to think about where I could impact my community better. And so I ran for Senate, and a special election was elected to Senate. Personally, I am a wife and a mom. I'm married to Jamie Devine. He and I have been married actually this year will be 23 years. And he is also an elected official, actually. So we've got a dual elected family. He is currently a member of our elected member of our school board, but he is also running unopposed to be our county council person. So in November, he'll become our county council person. And then we are the parents of four children. We have one son who actually, I say, was born into heaven. I had a stillborn child, James Henry, in 2014. And then we have three children here on earth. We have a 20-year-old who's a junior in college, a 15-year-old who is a sophomore in high school, and a 9-year-old who is in third grade. And so I am just really blessed to have all these roles: wife, mom, elected official, and public servant, and attorney.
Busy. If I could
Very, very busy.
if you are just tuning in, we ask that you come on in and take a seat here at the table as we learn a little bit more about Senator Devine, but also just what's happening here in South Carolina. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments and we will look at them throughout the broadcast and be able to hopefully answer them as we go through the conversation tonight. Senator, you mentioned a lot of things, and one thing I want to first highlight is your accomplishment of making history into the seat that what led to where you are now, which is your county council seat that you mentioned you made history on when you got it. But I also want to go back to something else you mentioned about your mayor seat. Although you didn't succeed it, you still launched here today of being the Senate. And it's not many women that is in leadership in regards to the House and Senate seat. So I want to ask, like, what inspired you to even get on this path of politics?
Great question. So as I mentioned, professionally, I worked in legal services. I worked actually in the area of domestic violence. I helped in family court and domestic violence. From there, I went on to be a domestic violence prosecutor for the state, and I was at the state attorney general's office. And this was the early 2000s, and I saw so much. And there was only so much we could do with the law. The laws in South Carolina, although have gotten better, still are woefully inadequate as it relates to survivors and victims of domestic violence. But I saw that I was really hindered by the law a lot, and I realized that as an attorney, I can only do so much. Because I have to take the laws as they are. And so I really started looking at like our laws and who makes them and why, and decided that in order, if I really wanted to make a change as far as policy, then I needed to become a lawmaker. And being from Columbia, I really wanted to do something for my hometown, and so I ran for city council. And like I said, was on city council for almost 20 years. And when I first ran, I was actually the youngest person as well. So I was the first African American elected at large, first African American female, and at that time I was the youngest. And so I made kind of history three
Mm.
times in that seat. But I didn't run to do history. I just really ran to serve my community. And I love local government. And I honestly did not think that I wanted to do anything else. People always ask me, are you going to run for higher office? Do you want to do anything else? And I really felt like local government is where you really impact communities in a significant way. So I really had no desire to do anything beyond the local level. But after 20 years of serving on city council, our mayor chose not to run again. And so I prayed on it and said, I want to be mayor. I really want to be mayor of this city. And so I ran for mayor, came up, I lost by less than 800 votes. Um, and I really, honestly had planned to run again for mayor. I was like, okay, I'll sit out one term. I'm gonna challenge him again. I'm gonna challenge him. I'm gonna run again. And I really truly believe that the mayor's race, it was brutal. I mean, I was being a female elected office is hard. Being an African American female is hard, and politics can be brutal sometimes. And so, during that race, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, sometimes people who say they're your friends and really aren't, and you see them for who they are. And so there was a lot of it was a bad race, and so I really at that point felt like, okay, it took me some time to kind of get over that loss. But
Mm.
like I said, I'm very focused and when I set my mind to something. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna run. I'm gonna just continue to do the work in the community, and I don't need a title to be effective. I'm just going to keep doing the work, and then in a couple of years I'll run again. And while I was doing the work in the community, I realized that everything that I was really working on was more of a state issue. I was working on gun violence, I was working on domestic violence, I was working on poverty and wealth building, and then, our state started a whole lot with the abortion ban. We had the 6-week abortion ban, and I went up to the state house to testify on that ban. And I realized that all the work I actually was doing in the community as I took those couple years off were really statewide issues. And then my senator untimely passed away. And he had a blood clot and passed away. And so there was a special election to fill his seat. So I had to make a decision really, really quickly, and everything was telling me, I prayed on it, but everything was telling me when he passed was, Tamika, everything you're doing in the community now is a state issue, and you really need, your voice to be heard there. And I actually think that because the way the mayor's race went, and the lessons I learned from there, I think that I tell people all the time, I think God had to slam that door in my face so hard that I actually had the thought to think of somewhere else. Because, like I said, people used to ask me if I ever wanted to run for the state house or run for Congress, and I'd say, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." And I think the way the mayor's race went caused me the ability to leave that office in such a definitive way that had me look at where I could be more effective. And so I ran for the Senate in a special election. I had three opponents, and I won without a runoff, which most people thought I'd have a runoff. And so I filled his unexpired term and then ran again for my first full term. So I'm now currently in my first full term in the Senate. And unfortunately, I'm only one of two women in the state Senate, which tells us again that, my voice was really needed at this time because we don't have many women in elected office, but definitely in the South Carolina State Senate, it's very few of us. And so I've enjoyed being there, and I enjoy the issues that I can bring a voice to.
And you said one of two. Can you tell the people either the one or two, like what's the total number for the Senate?
There's 46 senators. So yeah, out of 46 senators, there only two of us are women.
Mm,
There were more when I first got elected. I was actually I made history again. I was the first female to represent my district, but I also became the sixth female senator during that time, and
mm,
so that was the most women we ever had serving in the Senate in South Carolina at that time. But unfortunately, when the election came up, I ran for reelection. I got reelected. My colleague Margie Bart Matthews got reelected. But out of the four that didn't return, one chose not to run again, and then the other three were all Republican women, and they were primaried because of their stand of working across the aisle on issues like abortion, but other issues that really help communities. And they were targeted by their party and were defeated.
mm. You mentioned something early on. Your husband, as well as you both, are pretty much in politics. How do you find yourself balancing leadership, being a mom, a wife, and what keeps you grounded?
Well, what keeps us grounded, both of us, are our children. I mean, they are our why. And so, it is a lot sometimes. And, like my husband right now is at a community meeting. And if wasn't on with you, I probably would be at a community meeting. So my mom is cooking dinner for the kids and took my son to karate. So how I balance is I have a great support system. My mom is really very helpful. She retired to help us so that the kids didn't have to, be out late and other things. And so she's a blessing, definitely. But I tell people all the time, yes, sometimes it's hard, but they are my why. I think about where we are in South Carolina right now, and and really in this country, and our freedoms are being taken away from us daily. We are, South Carolina, we rank high in everything negative and low in everything positive. And in order to really build the state and the country that I want my children to thrive in, I have to be at the table. And so it is a balancing act. My husband and I are very aware of, when we both have demands, that having my mom, having his sister, having some friends and a great support is helpful. But we also know when to say no, that people know that we're doing the job that we're elected to. So if I can't come to every single meeting, or if I can't be at everything people want me to, they know that, that my children will come first. And so, I may have to miss this meeting to go to this at my child's school. Like right before I came on with you, I texted you and said I'll be a little bit late because my daughter, she's a cheerleader. And so she had a cheerleading meeting that I had to be at with her. And so, it's just really about prioritizing. It is about scheduling, and just making sure that you are true to what you're doing. And so my kids, like I said, they keep me grounded, and they also keep me very humble. They don't necessarily care that mama is senator. They care that mom is mom. And so they will tell me what's important, and they'll make sure that I keep myself grounded and humble. And so I thought find being a mom a blessing, and it helps me actually keep reminding me why I do what I do, because I want my children to be able to thrive in this state or wherever they decide to go, and that requires those of us who are willing to fight hard for democracy, for freedom, for rights. It requires us to be in the game.
Thank you. You all, if you're just turning in, please be sure to drop your questions here in the comments. For whatever it may be, we have someone that is 1 out of 2 right now in the Senate seat and is definitely making lead in ways, not just across social media, but definitely down at the State House. And so I thank you for just being willing to take on that fight, not just for Richland County, but just for South Carolina overall. And so I want to, when I see you, not just as an attorney, as a senator, as a mom, a wife, a sorority sister, a Sarah, when I think of you, I think of women. Because one thing you just said is there's only 2 of you all in the Senate seat, and so that's a huge factor. At least I hope so for women across South Carolina. Um, but especially when we talk about Black women, because we didn't always have privilege to even to be able to sit at tables like this. So when you think of women matters, when you think of those 2 words, what does that mean to you personally?
So, I mean, I think what it means to me personally is, and we're coming off of Mother's Day, and I heard a lot of great things in church and in the community, and people on social media saying things about, what Mother's Day meant to them. And I heard somebody say, without women, we wouldn't have, society, because, we are the moms of, of this nation. We are the nurturers of our community. We are the folks who are always doing the work. And so for me, what it means is that, we were designed to be a force. And quite honestly, a lot of times we don't step into our God-given leadership roles just because a lot of us are humble and we feel like, as long as I'm doing the work, it doesn't matter. I don't need the title. I don't need this. And I don't need a title, but I do think that we need to be in positions where decisions are made and where influence is happening. And I just look at, of course, I'm political, so I look at politics a lot, but I look at the decisions that are being made that influence our communities, our lives, our children. And a lot of those decisions are being made in rooms where you don't have the perspective of female voices present. And so I think it's really important that if we have to, knock down doors and, bust in doors to be at those tables, I think we have to, because we know that when we are there at the table, better decisions are made. And they're made not just for us personally, but they're made for our communities.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I love what you said about being at the table. Again, like you say, it's not technically about titles or roles, but it allows you to use your skill set, your experience to be at the table to help advocate for us. And I say us, meaning across South Carolina. And so with you having a background with youth, being a prosecutor, public safety, we're talking about education, domestic violence, I heard you mention. Why do you feel like those issues are important, not just to you, but across South Carolina?
Well, I mean, I think they're very important because particularly they deal with our communities, our families, and our children. And there's a saying or there's a greeting in Africa where they would say, how are the children? And the answer should be the children are well. And what that means is if children are thriving, then communities are thriving and families are thriving. And so for me, I think those issues are important because those issues touch our children in very important ways. And so, if you have children growing up in homes that are violent, then 9 times out of 10, you are going to see violence affect their lives in other ways as they grow up, whether they end up becoming victims of violence, they perpetrators of violence. And so we certainly want to address that. When you talk about, youth violence and gun violence and those things, those are things that are important to me. We know that, over the last 20 to 30 years, the violence in our communities, particularly as it relates to young people, have risen. Access to guns, access to other things that affect our young people. That is important. And if we're not addressing the root causes of those issues, then we're losing kids every single day to gun violence and to violence in our communities or to the prisons. And so that's important. And so for me, I think and that's the other part of that is so funny because as a state senator, as of one of two women, I tell sometimes I'll have some of some of my supporters will say, "Hey, we love that you're out there fighting for these issues, but we don't want people to pigeonhole you as a female that you're only doing the social issues or you're only doing that." And I tell them that I refuse to be pigeonholed, but I also feel like if I don't raise those issues, if Margie doesn't raise those issues, then who will? And not to say we've got some great men that we serve with, but their like lived experience is different than ours. Their frame of reference is different than ours. And not to say they don't care about kids. They do care about young people. They do care about our families. But the perspectives that they bring to the debate may be different because they're not moms. They're not, nurturers by nature. And so, I think it's really, really important that these issues have a female perspective, just to add to the conversation and hopefully make the solutions that we put out there better because we brought our perspectives to the table.
Thank you. And I appreciate that because that was going to kind of be my follow up question. Wow, it's two of you all pretty much in the Senate seat. And so you all kind of see it in regards to whether it being a wife role, a mother role, an aunt role. So what would you, in a short, brief statement, kind of encourage families that may be challenged by some of these issues today? What would you encourage a mom? Or how
Mm.
would you encourage a mom?
I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but I'd say you got to get involved. I mean, the first of all, we got to vote. It's disheartening, and I see one of the comments in there, so I'm sure you'll probably get to redistricting because I know
Mhm.
that's top of everybody's mind. But I get it's frustrating sometimes when you hear people say, my vote doesn't matter. If our votes didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take our
Taken away.
ability to vote and be part of the system. So that should tell you 100% your vote matters. But if we're not involved in the solution, if we're not voting for good people, then we get what we're getting now. We get our rights being taken away. We get communities like you talk about people struggling. You have people who don't care about the fact that people live in food deserts
Mhm.
or maternal health deserts, or that gas prices are high, or that people can't afford, even working two and three jobs, can't afford to pay their bills or to make or feed their family. I think we are struggling because we have policymakers who don't care that people are struggling or don't understand how hard it is to make ends meet. They want to take away SNAP benefits. They want to, um, you know, uh, put so much on education, and don't recognize that if children come to school hungry, they can't learn and they can't do well in school. But when you have an opportunity to put funding in the budget to provide free lunch, free breakfast and free lunches, they don't want to do it, but they want to spend that money decreasing taxes for people who make a whole lot of money. And so all of these decisions are drawn by who is in these places, who are in these positions. And so we have to vote. And then not just vote. Voting should not be the end thing. That should be the first thing. That should be the beginning. We have to vote, but then we have to hold the folks who are elected accountable, and then we have to be there to talk to them about what's happening in our communities. I mean, I know some people who they probably would care about some issues, but their community isn't dealing with those issues. And so when you go and you talk to folks about how the fact that we need to put money in gun violence prevention programs, if they're not having shootings in their community like I am, they don't see the need.
Needs.
And so I need people to share with their elected representatives what the needs are in the community, so that and then hold them accountable to addressing those needs.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So we do have a question here. And I'm going to get to that redistricting. We're going to talk about that because I know that's something real heavy across South Carolina. But the question is, in today's climate, what would make Richland County the right choice for families to relocate and build a future? And thank you for what you are doing.
Okay. Well, I mean, of course, I'm Richland County bred, and this is where I grew up, and so of course I'm a big proponent for Richland County. But what I would say is Richland County, we are the government seat. We've got great colleges. Richland County has seven universities here. We've got great school districts. We've got the capital, and we've got a lot of business, and so it is a great diverse city. I mean, the interesting part, and it kind of tie into the redistricting, since we've been talking about redistricting for the last couple of days. I've been looking at the numbers and the different areas and that kind of stuff, and it's just so interesting the parts of this state that are not diverse.
Mm.
Richland County is hugely diverse when you talk about racial, socioeconomic, rural, suburban, and urban. And so it is a great place to build a family and have opportunities. Whether you are a entrepreneur and want to start a business, we've got great, strong, small business resources right here in Richland County. Or if you want to work in higher education, like I mentioned, we've got 7 colleges. And so, we have a lot of diverse opportunities here in Richland County. And so I think it is a great place. But it is also only as good as, people getting involved. And so it's interesting because people used to always say, oh, okay, I'm not going to stay in Columbia. I'm going to go to Charlotte or Atlanta. And so now, because there's nothing to do here, now you have a weekend and there's like 20 different events, and people are like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on here. I mean, whether you are a sports enthusiast, we got sports happening, or whether you like arts and culture, we've got great museums and everything else. It just really is a great diverse place to raise your family.
Thank you for that. And Miss Tina here, one of our viewers, said election has consequences. When you elect the wrong candidate, vote wisely and vote with care. And she also mentioned that she relocated. I'm going to assume she says WC. I'm guessing that's Williamsburg County to Richland County, and she loves it. So I can only imagine. And Columbia,
Or I was
Richland.
thinking West
Oh,
Columbia.
West Columbia, maybe West Columbia. I'm sorry, maybe that is it. But it's definitely growing. And so I thank you for sharing that. But we're definitely gonna go right on in because I know people are waiting to hear your views as we talk about the redistricting. And I know that's one of the biggest conversations happening right now, especially across South Carolina and across our nation. And it's heavy. But before we really get into it, if you would, for the viewers like who don't really understand what's happening, can you explain why redistricting matters and how it definitely impacts South Carolina or could impact South Carolina?
No, absolutely. Okay, and then you were right. Turquoise. So Tina said Williamsburg County.
Oh,
So shout out to my colleague, Senator Ronnie Sabb, who represents Williamsburg County. But glad to have you here in Richland County. So redistricting, and this is such a huge topic, and I'm gonna tell you, I try and be well. Of course, I'm gonna always be passionate about this, but I try and be kind of lay it out for people so they understand kind of what's happening and how fast it's happening, and really all this is by design. But what redistricting is typically, usually, places redistrict every 10 years after the census. And what it is you, for the whole thing of one person, one vote, you want to make sure that you have an equal amount of people in every single district, whether it is your congressional districts, your state house districts, or even your county and city districts. You have to have about the same amount of people in every single district, and the districts are supposed to be by law. They are supposed to have common interests within the same district. So, of course, in the Voting Rights Act of 1965, where you did not have African Americans elected, and you had large populations of African Americans who were not represented and could not have the opportunity to elect their own representatives or representatives who are from their community, who look like them, who feel like them, who have the same issues of them. The Voting Rights Act put in Section 2 had a lot of things in it that really made it where you have the opportunity to have African Americans elected. After the Voting Rights Act, that's when you saw a lot of people elected. Our congressman right here in my county and others is the only African American, predominantly African American district, congressional district in the state of South Carolina, James Clyburn. He was elected after that. A lot across the country, but particularly across the South, that's when you saw African Americans elected to different offices. So anyway, so typically again, you do only redistrict after the census because you adjust it based on population growth and things like that. So mid decade redistricting is unusual, does not usually happen. But based on all accounts, that because of the way that people are frustrated with the way this country is going, a lot of people think that during the midterm this year, the Republicans who have the majority in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate will lose their seats because of the way that races are going. And so the current president has asked states, Republican-led states, to do mid-decade redistricting, although that is usually unheard of. And so that was the one thing. And then based on last week's case, Louisiana versus Calais, the U.S. Supreme Court struck out Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and said that you cannot draw districts based on race. You can only draw districts based on, but you can draw them based on politics. And so you have states like South Carolina that immediately started getting pressure from the White House to do mid-decade redistricting. And so right now, you have a very fast track process happening here in South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama. I mean, there's a lot of states that are being pressured to do this redistricting. And so right now we've got 3 days left in our legislative session, and the majority, the Republican Party, is pushing to redistrict to eliminate the one majority minority district that we have in the state of South Carolina, which is currently held by Jim Clyburn. And when I look at the numbers across the state, they will dilute predominantly African American districts, but they will dilute Democratic votes, so that the goal is to get all representatives. We only have one Democrat that represents South Carolina, but basically they want no Democrats to represent South Carolina in Congress. And so if they get their way, this will just be congressional districts. But I really also want your viewers to know that this does not stop at Congress. This Calais decision will impact state house seats. So we've already been told in January they'll start to do our state house seats as well. And so right now we don't have many African Americans who are elected statewide anyway, or in the state house. But the goal will be to reduce that number as well. And then, even on a local level, here in the city of Columbia has the same thing. We have what we call 4-2-1. We have 4 district seats. Out of those 4 district seats, 2 are majority minority and 2 are not. And so what will happen if the city then does redistricting, to have the ability to have those 2 districts where it is you have more of an opportunity to elect an African American, will be taken away. And so when I say that, we are going backwards, literally everything that people fought for in the 60s, as far as not just the right to vote, but the right to elect our representatives, to have people at the table, as I mentioned, like with women, the same thing with lived experiences. When you have Congress and state house seats and even city halls that do not have African American voices at the decision making table, what you will find is that you will have decisions that are being made that hurt our communities, or at least don't represent our communities well. And so that's why this is critically important for all of us to be tuned into and understand what's happening, and to be part of the solution. So going back to voting, we got to vote, but we also need to get all of our friends and neighbors and our family members to vote. I know that everybody listening to me has probably talked to somebody who says, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter. Or, we know that in 2024, people sat out because they didn't like the way Kamala laughed or whatever. That time is time out for all that mess. We got to realize what is happening, and literally we are taking our children are in a position to have less rights than we had, and that is scary, unless we rapidly change what's happening.
Thank you. So we have a question. We're going to go ahead to the comments. It says, what are your thoughts on increasing collaboration between schools, mental health agencies, and lawmakers to address youth violence and emotional wellness?
No, absolutely. And I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but yes, I mean, I think that's a great idea. But again, it goes back to having elected officials who believe that that's important. One of the things that I've done since I've been there, is I have elevated the concern about mental wellness, especially for everybody, but especially as it relates to our young people. We had a bill that was to help increase the opportunity for mental health counselors and social workers to come into the schools, because not every school has a social worker. I mean, there are some schools that share, like 3 or 4 schools share one social worker. You have rural counties where you don't have as many social workers available, so they don't have that. And so I've talked about how do we do these collaborations, and you will have some of my colleagues will be like, well, we don't need people coming in the school and telling the schools what to do, da da da. And so they don't see that it's helpful. And so a lot of this is policy driven. And so yes, I believe that we've got to have collaboration. We have to meet children where they are. I'm very proud that when I was at the City of Columbia, we started a program called Handle with Care, where if violence happened in a community, the police officers would go to the school, let the school know, hey, this happened last night. There was a shooting. This happened. This happened. Let the school know, so that if Johnny is showing up to school tired, cranky, potentially acting out, they know that this is because of maybe what traumatic experience he has dealt with at home. And so they have the social worker on hand ready to deal with that. That model should be a model throughout our state. But it takes money, it takes willingness, it takes resources. And so we need our state leaders to say, this is something that we want in every school in South Carolina. And if you don't have people who feel like that's important, they're not going to push it.
Thank you. Here's another question that we'll go to that I overlook, and I apologize. Said, first of all, thank you for serving and representing and for taking your time this evening. And you talked on basically our African American churches. And when it comes to organizing, getting people registered to vote, and providing transportation to the polls, sometimes it appears to be no strategy and no plan. Who is leading in this area, and where do you consider to be grassroots? And again, thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you for your question, and that's a great question. And again, we look at history and look at what we can learn from history. And when you look at the '60s, our churches were on the forefront. Our churches in the NAACP were on the forefront of getting people registered, getting people to the polls, educating people about who they're voting for and why, and what they stand for. And so, we've gotten to the point where our churches have taken a step back. And so we do need to reactivate that. But as far as like who is taking the lead and being the leader, there's a lot of efforts that do seem to be disjointed. If I do say so myself, for Turquoise and I represent a great organization that is nonpartisan, but has launched a program called Delta Decides, and where we are working to register 1 million voters. We're working to mobilize and get people educated into the polls. And so we have a plan and a strategy, and we will be working within the sorority. We need others to do that. We need the D9 to do that. We need the churches to do that, because we can't do everything, but we all can do something. And if we're all working and not working in silos, but working collaboratively, but saying, hey, I'm gonna take Richland County, I'm gonna take Williamsburg County, I'm gonna take this community, I'm gonna take this neighborhood, I'm gonna work on mobilizing, I'm gonna work on registering. If we have a plan, then I think that we can collectively come together. But I do think that one of the problems is, I think that we are always looking for the leader. We're looking for the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X, and unfortunately, there's so many different trains of thought, and honestly, people get their information from different ways and different sources, and so there isn't going to be that one leader. So we need to stop waiting on that one leader to come out, but we need to look at, like, how can we be the leader and say, look, I'm going to take ownership, and I'm going to work with this organization, or I'm going to work in this area, and that's how we get together. But the only way for us to do that also, though, is to check egos at the door and recognize that all of us can be part of the movement. All of us are part of the movement. Actually, not can be. All of us are part of the movement, whether we like it or not. And we got to step up and do our part.
Thank you. And I want to also say thank you to Mr. Salters for that question, because he even mentioned Dr. King and the lessons that he pretty much taught us, or we consider to read about in the movements and what they have done years ago. And again, like you say, it takes all of us to, see what part we can play to help push things forward. So thank you again for your feedback on that. So You mentioned a little bit about the redistricting, and we understand how that could play a part and what that does. And so, what would be your take now? I know you all are still in session, but what would you give or offer to the viewers so that they can know how to stay involved, stay connected, and what to look forward to?
Mhm. Well, a couple things. Of course, if you're not following me on social media, follow me on social media because I do try and use that, well as other things, but I do try and use that to get information out. So, I'm on Instagram, Tameika Isaac Devine, my whole name, name on Facebook. Facebook and Instagram are the main places, but I am also on. I'm starting to get on TikTok, and then I'm on Twitter as well, or X, whatever you call it. But follow me on social media, and I will always try and give you information about what's happening. And then what I would just say, what do we have to look forward to? I am I hope that it will not pass, at least not this year. Now, if it doesn't do this year, it probably will in 2 years, just to be honest with you. But I'm hoping, I mean, it's going to cost us millions of dollars to redistrict right this second and start the election. We're already in the middle of our primary election, and right now, if they change these lines, they're going to have to change the lines before June because they're going to have to and then they're going to have to reopen for candidates to file. There are people who are already running for some of these congressional seats who may not actually be in the new congressional seat, and they've already spent thousands of dollars, with mailers and getting out the vote. It's going to be horrible. We've got ballots that have already gone out and some that have already been returned from overseas. So we are sending our men and women to war right now. We're in the middle of war right now. We've got men and women who are serving this country in war right now who have returned their ballot to vote for or vote against whoever has the power to, send them to war, their families to war.
Mhm.
And we're about to tell them that their votes are not going to count because we're going to throw out this election so that we can do another election in August. It is crazy. And so there are a lot of reasons that I think we can make so that hopefully they will not move forward with it right now. But regardless, I think the thing that people need to take away with, even if they redistrict, it doesn't matter if we get people out to vote in mass. We had almost 100,000 uh, registered African American voters who did not vote in the last election. And so we've got people who can vote. We've got another, I think, 200,000 or so of eligible African American voters who are not registered. And this is not, all about race. We have so many folks. We've got young people who are not registered who think their votes don't matter. And so I think our marching orders between now and November, regardless if they redistrict or not, needs to be getting people registered and getting people to vote, because it doesn't matter if they skew the lines thinking they're going to cheat and win this race. If we get more people to vote and they vote the right way, it doesn't matter how they change the lines. We will overwhelm them, because again, remember this part too. The redistricting lines are based on historic voting data. So they're going on who voted in 2024, 2022, 2020. And so if people didn't vote, and we already know a very small percentage of us vote, that's the numbers that they're using. And so if we overwhelm the ballot box, if more of us vote than they expect to vote, it doesn't matter that they'll change the lines. We will elect good people.
And again, that's why everybody must go and vote. And so I want you to recap just quickly because I want people to understand how critical this is. Again, while they're trying to do that, we understand that ballots are pretty much already out there overseas, right? And so them trying to change this could possibly impact us going back to the polls. And I think you mentioned in August. Is that kind
Mhm.
of what we're looking at?
It is, and I think I saw somebody had a question, how many? I don't know if their question was how many votes. So there have been thousands of ballots. All the overseas ballots have already been mailed out. The election director testified on Friday that he has already received about 300 or so ballots already back. So there are about 300 ballots, and that was as of Friday. More came in Friday, more came in Saturday, more came in today. And so by the time they make this decision, we could have over 1,000 overseas ballots would have been returned. But in addition to that, if they do change the election, they're saying it'll be in August. Ballots have already been printed. And so whether you vote absentee or in person at the machine, they cannot legally they cannot change and logistically they cannot change those ballots. Those machines have already been programmed, and that's the other thing he said. That so when you go on June 7th to vote, even if they decide to move this election, the person that your congressional race will already still be on the ballot. And so if it's somebody, and we know not everybody is watching the news, is seeing what's happening. So if you go in there to vote on June 7th and you say, oh, this is who's running for Congress, I'm going to vote for this person, your vote will be thrown out because they are going to invalidate that election. And so then they will have another primary just for congressional races in August. And then if there's a runoff, then there's be another election 2 weeks later. And then the general again will be sometime in November. So conceivably you can go in June, because you still got to go to June to vote in your other primary. You go to June, you go to the ballot in June, then you go vote again in August. Then you might have to go a second time in August. I mean, it is going to confuse people, and people are not going to understand who they're voting for, what they're voting for, and why. And so what we again just need to make sure that we get the word out for folks, that people, it's still not too late to reach out to your House member, your state House member, and your state senator, because we have not voted yet. The decision is not made yet. You need to reach out and say, look, I elect you, I vote for you, I'm in your district, and I think this is a horrible idea. And then even after this race, then the lawsuits will start. The last lawsuit about our redistricting in congressional races cost the Senate alone $6 million. I don't know how much it cost the House. And so right now, the election director said to move the election is going to cost at least $2.3 to $2.5 million. They put already $2 million in the budget for litigation, which, like I said, last time it's cost $6 million. And so when you think about how high our gas prices are, or how high our groceries are, or that we don't have money to feed our kids over the summer, that money could be going to that, but instead the money will be going to redistricting and litigation regarding this, just because the president called up a few folks and said, hey, I want you to do this and give me another seat.
Yes. Before we move on for this, we have a question here that asks, what can we do to put a temporary pause on the redistricting, and can the current governor veto it?
Okay, it's a great question, Tina. What I just said, you can, to put a pause on it. The best way is to reach out to your House members and your senators and tell them to vote no, and get everybody to get them to vote no. I've been seeing some of the social media, some of my Republican colleagues, and their constituents are telling them they don't like it. So I'm hoping that some of them will say, hey, I got to listen to my constituency, not the White House. So that's the best way. Can the governor veto it? Yes, he can. Will he? I don't know. I mean, he knows that this is really what the president wants. And so I'm not sure if he'll veto it. So I don't think that we can hold our breath to think that the governor will do that. So I think the biggest thing is, to call your House members or senators and get them not to do it. And then if they do it, we need to support organizations like the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, the ACLU. These are organizations who will likely bring a lawsuit to at least put a temporary hold on the redistricting plan.
Thank you. I do want to ask you, just given you are one of two female that is in the Senate. One of the things I work with families and young people all day, every day. And just but last month I had an opportunity to come up to the State House and had a chance to hear from you in person as we talk about advocating for women and our young people. And could you just tell us right now, where does the abortion rights for women is at?
Okay. So right now, South Carolina is operating under a 6-week abortion ban. So that's the law in South Carolina right now. So it is still restrictive like Georgia and others. But there are 2 bills right now that are being that are still on the floor. We only have 3 days left, so who knows if they'll go anywhere. But one is a total abortion ban. it has not been placed on the floor of the Senate yet for for a vote, and then with only 3 days left, it's likely not to get through the Senate and go to the House. But what this one would do is be a total abortion ban. It also criminalizes and makes the civil penalties also for anybody what they call aid and abetting someone who gets an abortion. So if you drive somebody to Maryland to get an abortion, you could be charged.
Oh,
If
wow.
if you help pay pay for the medication to be come to somebody, then you could be charged. So that's that current one. That one likely is not going to go anywhere this session because it's only in the Senate. It has not gone to the House. The one we need to be looking at, and then may come on the floor of the Senate this week, is there's another one that was passed by the House that outlaws the abortion medications. So people now who actually will go and order a medication, mifepristone, or I can't remember the name of the other one, but these abortion medications, it outlaws those. And so what that will do, number one, you can't order them and it can't be mailed to you. But the other thing is it's really going to be hard, and this is what we heard from a lot of doctors, is doctors use these medications if someone is having hemorrhaging, if they're having a miscarriage, and it keeps them from basically bleeding out. But it will prohibit doctors from using those. And so that is those are the two scary ones. And that one has passed the House, will come to the Senate. And so we'll see how that goes this week. So again, reach out to your senators and tell them that you want them to vote no on this bill.
Thank you. And thank you, Tina, for your comment. Sometimes you feel like we need more women in South Carolina to get involved in government. Another comment, I think it leads to a question, is they've been learned speaking with other people. Not everyone knows who represents them. What can be done? What would be
Glad
your
you Andrew asked that question, Shaka. So let me tell you this. I never speak in front of the group. And Turquoise, you know this because I said this. I never speak in front of the group. I try not to. I hope I always remember without telling people, look, the South Carolina legislature has an app. Okay. And so if you go to your app store, go whether you have Apple or Android, go to SC Legislature, go to the App Store and go put in SC Legislature, and then it's a little blue app. It's the dome of the state house. You can download that app, and then you can put in your information. It's going to tell you who your House member and who your senator is. It will also help you. You can watch what's happening. You can also track bills. So if you're interested in education, you're interested in abortion, you're interested in gun violence, you can put in like that keyword, and then all the legislation that deals with that will come up. This is a great way to at least watch what's happening on the state level. On the local level, I will tell you what you can go to scvotes.org, and put in your voting information, and it will give you all of your representatives. It will tell you from Congress to your state house to your county council and your city council and even your school board. And so go to scvotes.org and put in your information, and it'll tell you who all your representatives are. And I will tell you, go one step further. Once you know who your representatives are, reach out to all of them, send them an email, say, hey, you're doing a great job. Hey, I don't agree with you on this, or at least just reach out so that you can get used to communicating to your elected official, because it is so important that we hear from the folks that we represent.
Thank you, thank you. So you've definitely been working closely in a lot of communities, and definitely here, South Carolina, Richland being your home. What gives you hope about South Carolina future?
Mm. Well, biggest thing is our kids, our young people. I will say I am in awe of young people who are sometimes they're impatient, and I say sometimes too impatient. But I like their impatience because they're not down for waiting 10 years for change, and so they're doing the work, and so I'm excited about that. I mean, I there a lot of them can't vote yet, but they volunteer, they do some stuff, so I love it. So that's one of the things that I'm very hopeful is our young people. And then I think the second thing that I'm hopeful about is the fact that I do have more people who are reaching out, and even if they don't completely understand the system, they're saying, "Hey, I don't understand this. Why is it like this?" And the fact that they're asking questions tells me that they're willing to learn. And if we can educate our communities more so that we are informed voters and informed citizens, that gives me hope that we will change, because South Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. And I'll tell you guys, I'm not even going to lie about it. Most of the people who are moving here, they're moving here because our state is so conservative, and they're tired of their states that might be a little bit less conservative changing with the times. And so people who are moving here may not share our values. And so the fact that people are more informed and wanting to question, hopefully they'll be more engaged in the process, and we can actually get more people who really believe in diversity, equity, democracy to be able to participate in the system.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Regina. I definitely have to shout her out. She says she has a good state legislator, and that being you, and say that you are doing a great job. And I have to thank her and Dinetta for their connections with you. So I appreciate it, and just want to give them their kudos for having us connect. So I appreciate
And
you all.
I
Um,
do, and I want to shout out Regina too, because Regina, I met Regina was when I was knocking doors,
mhm.
and so and she was like, after that, she was like, "What else can I do to help?" And so I do want people to also know that there are ways that you can be involved in the process too. You've got a good candidate you want to support. Volunteer to help them, knock some doors, make some phone calls. If you have a little bit of change, donate to their campaigns. That's why we don't have so enough good people running for office, because it's hard. And so the more of us that help get good people elected, the better our processes or our policies will be.
Thank you. And that is definitely Regina. I've met Regina years ago at Morris College. Obviously, she pledged under us in Zyro, and she's been Regina. So that's definitely her. She's going to ask, she's going to jump in, and she's going to make her way in whatever effort she can. So thank you again, because we definitely, like you say, need more people like that. But South Carolina right now, we talked about our young people. I appreciate you just giving us the scope of where South Carolina stands at. If you could encourage us as the citizen across South Carolina to just focus on one thing right now as we move forward as a state, what would that be?
You mean a policy or an action?
I'll say you can do both.
An action, educating everybody about this redistricting. This is scary, y'all. This is so scary that it's we're even in the middle of this. So tell your friends and neighbors who might not be watching the news, might not think that this is a real thing, and tell them to get engaged, and make sure that we're getting people mobilized to vote for November. So that would be the action. The policy, I would say, is that we've really, really got to. I'd say two things: abortion, because I think that's cool. It is a healthcare issue. We have so many maternal health deserts. It is scary, and Black women are dying at disproportionate rates, and so we've got to deal with that. And so I'll say this: not I won't say abortion. I'll say healthcare. We've got to deal with healthcare in our state. We've got so many things, from diabetes to maternal health issues, that really put us at the top of everything negative. So we've really got to deal with healthcare in our state.
So I also want to ask another question as we move forward to election. Both you and I being a part of a great organization. That is, I saw someone shout out theirs. So I definitely have to feel like I have to shout out ours. So I'm grateful for having the opportunity to be a part of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, that is. But when we talk about our civic groups, what would you, as a call to action, what would you ask us to do right now as we lead up to election time?
I mean, if you have a group that is on the front lines for social action, then you need to be a part of it, and you don't have to be part of just one group. So yes, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm on the National Social Action Commission, and I'm co-chair of our chapter Social Action. So I'm working really hard on social action. But I'm also a member of NCNW, the National Council of Negro Women, and that they are doing great work. And we need you. If you are a Black woman on here, NCNW, you need to be joining the NAACP. And you don't have to be African American to join NAACP. That group is on the front lines, and so be a part, be an active part of the NAACP, so that they can be out there. And then League of Women Voters. League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. They educate people about the issues, and I will tell you that they are doing a really good job at trying to get people engaged. And so those are just a handful. I know that there are others out there, but those are a handful of organizations that I would encourage you to actually at least connect with, follow on social media, join if they have a membership, and be an active member, because the question that someone asked before about, where's the strategy, who's leading the movement, there won't be a person, but there will be a collaboration among a lot of great organizations, and I think these are the organizations that will be on the front line of helping us fight back against all these attacks on our democracy.
Thank you. So here we are, South Carolina, for those of you that are here in South Carolina, but if you just across the nation, period, it's important. We got to get to the polls and we must vote. As she mentioned early on, I know it's oftentimes that we say it don't matter. But we complain about these gas prices. As she mentioned, our groceries prices are increasing. And so it does matter. And we need each and every one of you to stay involved, ask the questions, as she say, make the phone calls, and get people registered to vote, whether that be for November at this point. But definitely in November, we need each other to help push one another that we go out and vote. And so, Senator Devine, I personally want to say thank you again for being a leader, yet one of the very few women at the State House advocating, pushing, and leading the way for us, because it's important that we see you and you know that we see you. And so we thank you for your hard work, for what you're doing out there for us. Is there any last words you want to give, encourage, or maybe share that we might have didn't talk about? You're welcome to do so.
Nothing. You've hit everything. I would just encourage everybody to say, just stay in the fight. Don't get discouraged. We've been through harder times, and this is in my lifetime. This is probably the hardest things that I think we've been through. But we know our ancestors have been through harder times than this, and we know that we're a resilient people. So, but we can't win if we're not in the fight. So stay in the fight. Stay encouraged. Stay involved and engaged, and make sure you vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for joining here. I know you're busy, from the attorney's office to the State House to making sure you stay involved with your family. But thank you for being willing to stay in the fight for all of us. And so for whatever we could do, continue to share, connect, and put the word out there for us, and know that we are behind you every step of the way. To our viewers, we thank you all for tuning in. You here tonight, Senator Devine. So don't forget, when it's her time again, we want to continue to make sure that we are pushing, voting, and supporting her as well. And thank you again. Thank you to our viewers. So till next time, we ask that you continue to stay involved, ask your questions, and let's be ready to vote. And remember, broadcasting results with Rouse right here. So if you want to take a seat at the table, please reach out. Until next time, you all continue to stay involved. Thank you.